Mark, appreciate you taking the time. I know you're getting acclimated. You've been doing this now for a long time. Talk about the process, though. Spring training, getting settled. What does that look like? And does it ever get old, I guess, after a while? Or
yeah. I don't think opening days ever get old. I mean, it's my 34th in MLB, which is hard for me to believe. Yesterday was, and that transition from spring training, back after, is always a little bit of a logistical tough one, because you obviously move your life and your entire half your organization is working out of one spot for 7 weeks. And so it's just a matter of kind of moving back, getting settled personally and professionally. And then also just shifting rhythms. Spring training is that. I love the time of year because you're around the game without the stress of the wins and losses. It's kind of a cool period of time, because you feel that sense of renewal, excitement, optimism. What's coming. The 162 is coming behind it. And once that starts, you recognize you're going to go through a lot of ups and downs over the next 5 months. So. I think just spring training is a special time of the year for me. Always excited to get going again. And the transition back, opening day is a celebratory day, but it also just marks the fact that what is unique to our game, 162, that grind, that journey, knowing that there will be something unexpected ahead.
Yeah, I keep thinking when we talk about spring training, it really is that one period of time where everyone is a little bit more relaxed. I mean, you got to make some decisions, but, most cases, the roster that you have is going to spring training. The guys that are there knowing, well, if they're already, slated to be on the team, you're just getting ready for the season to start. So it's kind of that calm before the storm. But, I mean, hey, people like you never really sleep. But is there a downtime? What would be considered your downtime?
I think that it's interesting – in my evolution of the game, again, just being old, and the fact that I've been doing it so long, there were periods of time when I first started in the early and mid 90s when the off season meant something. Those words, off season. Now, when someone says to me, "What do you guys do in the off season?" I kind of laugh. Like it's not really an off season. It's just a time we're not playing games, right? Like so. I think this is the way I always try to best explain it, Ryan, which is in the off season, it's still a really busy job. We just have nights. We have our nights to ourselves, and we don't kind of suffer the mini trauma of the ups and downs and kind of feeling wins and losses. Because I don't care how long you do it. If you're a competitor, you still are you can change, and you have a way of managing, not riding a wave 162 times, but it's human nature that you just feel a little better when you win, and the losses still suck. It's just a reality. So, last night, a little harder for me, going to sleep, a little tougher waking up. I handle it better than I used to, like definitely better when I was in my mid 30s, when I just starting out as a GM. But it still not easy. But that's the way I describe the off season. Like, we're still busy. Think about all the business we have to conduct in a condensed period of time, whether it's budgeting, staff hiring, coach hiring, all the people that support the major league team. There's always going to be openings. There's always going to be changes, promotions, opportunities people get elsewhere, have to hire a dietitian, have to hire a trainer, our case this year, a scouting director. So there's and then on the business side, we're conducting our entire sales cycle in an off season. So we're in a condensed time frame to conduct a lot of business, free agent contracts, trades, construct the roster, all those things. But we do get some reprieve. That reprieve, though, is probably just from competitive up and downs.
Yeah, when you mentioned all of that, you're one of the few, Mark, that actually does, both sides of it, the baseball side, the business side. And for people sometimes, I think when I was growing up, and I've been exposed to more of it, people think all of it maybe is intertwined or, it's all one thing. It's not. There's so many different variables and variations that go into it. Oh, and then by the way, winning games on the field is kind of what's going to also help sell a product. That's just business.
That is the biggest lever. That will always be the biggest lever.
And winning cures everything, right? So I'm sorry about last night. Hey, the Bats just got lucky. They got some guys that can swing it. Might be the Jays' night for tonight or the rest of the series. I got to ask, you said you had nights to yourself. Why do all these moves seem to be announced, though, in the offseason at like 1 a.m. for certain teams? Mark, are you up that late? I know it's not saying with you specifically, but we get reports that would pop out there, breaking so-and-so signs. Here's the contract.
Yeah.
What's up?
I think deadlines tend to, draw out human beings to make action. So as we get closer to any deadlines, trade deadlines, closer to spring training and the date reporting dates, you get into winter meetings and you're physically face to face. So, I think cycles and deadlines tend to create action. There's certainly obviously East Coast, West Coast dynamics that exist from some of the most powerful agents that operate on the West Coast, and we're in East Coast times. But I can promise you I'm not anymore up at those times. So I talked to Ross Atkins, our GM. I know where we are, and then I wake up in the morning and kind of look what conversations happened overnight. But rarely are we closing deals. I think you don't want to ever act with a sense of urgency. You want to be thoughtful, have a plan and a strategy as you go into those conversations.
Yeah, always got to have a strategy. But I just was always curious because I go, you know what? Is someone really, is this really happening at this hour? And it gives great perspective to it. And another reason why is because of some of the free agents, like specifically this year. I got to be honest, it felt like every time, I know it didn't maybe work out the way that you guys had hoped, but it felt like the report would come out, the Blue Jays were in. The Blue Jays were in. And is that all into the strategy, or in those cases, obviously with some high sought-after names, you also have to be patient because you're not the ones that can actually be the ones to say, yes, hey, we're taking the deal.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in dichotomy of control. Like, we control what we can control, So when it comes to those scenarios and you're playing in the biggest waters of free agency, which is in the first 24 years of my career in Cleveland, was not something we did. But since I've gotten to Toronto, it's a bigger market, it's a bigger city, and we're in the AL East. And we've had the ability, when there have been exceptional cases, Ryan, and that's what I consider Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, and Roki Sasaki. Very different. Each of those, Roki Sasaki especially, wasn't a financial situation at all. But we've made the objective business case, which again was unique with each one of those guys, for the talent and for the money in the ranges that those guys signed. Certainly in Ohtani, the exact range. Soto, we didn't come that close, but we were in high levels of the game. And Sasaki wasn't about money. It was just presenting to a Japanese player the benefits of Toronto, and he picked us over San Diego, which was somewhat remarkable, which hadn't been done before. And it's a hard sell over the Dodgers for someone who's a Japanese player with the concentration of players, the proximity to Japan, compared to here. So I feel really good about us being in those conversations and competing for that talent. Coming in second place, I don't apologize for that. We're going to continue to go after, when there's exceptional talent like that, continue to go after those players. And I'm convinced when the right guy's there, we'll sign them. We signed a lot of good free agents, and Gausman and Bassett and George Springer and Ryu and, numerous others. So I think that we're signing guys, but that elite guys at the very top are the ones you're talking about that get a lot of notice,
Yeah, you guys have been aggressive. You just listing that off. It hasn't been that it isn't a lack of effort or desire, but then, hey, what makes sense then for everybody? And everyone has different needs. Out of curiosity, because, Baltimore is going to have to deal with this here in a little bit, and they already are. What are you going to do with this young talent? But then when they were trying to attract certain guys, the challenge of, is Baltimore going to match the offer that the player wants? And then also, what makes them want to come play in Baltimore? Hey, I love Baltimore, Mark. I know you, obviously there's a connection, right? But what in your mind then is the hardest challenge with Toronto when you're trying to then sell the point? Is it, I guess I'll let you answer that, because I feel like each team has their own set of challenges.
That's a great question. I think a lot of the challenge in Toronto has just been the unknown. That it's a new country, it's a different currency, the border, all the things that are not known. The things that I didn't know when I came here 10 years ago is just what an international world-class city it is, with an incredible economy, and the fact that you're playing for the whole country. We go to Seattle, Ryan. I don't know if you've ever seen video of this. When we play in Seattle, that entire stadium is full of Blue Jay fans. It's like a home game for us. People who come down from British Columbia drive down 3-4 hours and just fill Seattle Stadium. And that's thousands of miles away from Toronto, which is hard to believe. So our television numbers are the highest in all of MLB, higher than the Yankees, higher than the Dodgers, higher than everyone. That's, the secret behind that is not that it's just Toronto, but people in Ottawa, BC, Montreal, throughout the entire country. So there's 1 million people a night, 700,000 people a night watching our games, which is pretty incredible. So the selling points for players, I think it's not for everyone, but the guys it's not for are the guys that want to live on 40 acres, outside of a city. It's more of an urban team to play for. It's tough, to commute in from the outside communities. If you embrace living in this city and what this city's all about, it's an incredible place to play, with the best baseball facilities, both spring training and here, best clubhouse in Major League Baseball that we just did last year, and an incredible fan base that's national. It's nationwide.
Yeah, Toronto, every player that I know, my former teammates, everyone, one of their favorite places to go is Toronto. They tell me all the time. So it's true. And also, you're Canada's team. The Blue Jays are Canada's team by even default. That is the team there, even though they're located in Toronto. And also, when you're talking about places and needs, Corbin Burns was a common thing with Baltimore and Toronto. But Corbin, he has desires. West Coast, families in Arizona.
Sleep in his own bed. That's a rare thing. Yeah.
How rare is that? I mean, he's the 1% of the 1% that gets to actually choose what he wants to do. I digress on that. One thing though, as we get close to wrapping up here, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, because baseball has changed. In the sense of, I get it. People need to take care of their livelihoods, need to take care of whatever their desires are. But I always loved that. Maybe I grew up with it, and maybe I was biased than Zach and Mark because of my situation. I had a family member that played for a long time in one place.
Yeah.
And I know with one specifically for you guys, it's Vlad Jr.
Yes.
The ultimate goal there is to keep him there long term, but we don't really get to see guys do that too often.
Not many. I mean, I would listen to bond with you and I, is that my dad, your dad, my dad had your dad, he had Kirby Puckett,
Yep.
Those are two guys, and Brooks Robinson, right? Those are three guys that spent their entire careers in one place and recognize what it can mean to be a legacy player, to be developed, to come to the big leagues, and then to stay in one uniform your entire career. In the case of, I never speaking for him, but Kirby, your dad, the understanding of what that means, and your dad's case to be from the area, which is even more, remarkable, right? Like that's almost never. But the understanding of what that can mean, both in your playing career and in your post-playing career, as a member of the community, and continuing to be a business person and contribute to the community, what that legacy can mean to a franchise like Toronto, where it's a relatively new franchise. I mean, we're going to celebrate our 50th season next year, which is not very long compared to, some of the franchises in the game. Vladdy has a chance to make an indelible footprint in the history of Canadian sports, and, would be the greatest position player in the history of the Blue Jays if he stays here. So I defer to kind of optimism, and we can talk about this because it's relevant to the Orioles as well, with all the great young talent they've got. But I defer to optimism because Vladdy wants to stay here and we want to keep him here. Now, here's the challenge the Orioles have and the challenge we have with every young player. Multi-year contracts for young players before they reach free agency are about sharing risk. And what you're trying to do is look at the sweet spot between where the team is comfortable accepting the risk of injury, dips in performance, long-term projections of what happens as they age, where the player has to be comfortable as giving up the unknowns of what they could potentially make in the marketplace. And they have to place a premium usually on being in that one spot. And you're searching, and the negotiation is all about searching for the sweet spot. That's the fact. It's like, where do we get to that overlap of we're both comfortable sharing risk at this level, understanding each other's risk, and how can we structure a deal which makes us both feel good in the end. However, it does take both sides being a little uncomfortable, us being uncomfortable with length of deal and kind of uncertainty over a long period of time, and the player being uncomfortable knowing that maybe they could have made more money, maybe not, but maybe they could have made more money if they went to free agency. So usually there has to be a premium and a desire on what it means to that player to be a legacy player, to stay in that market, to be a part of that, and really become a part of that community.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you make, because I do think people sometimes forget that. It's not that you don't have a desire or the player doesn't have a desire, but how much are you willing to risk on your side? So like Juan Soto with the Nats, he got offered a good deal back in the day.
Yes.
But he was betting on himself to, hey, I think I'm going to get more. I'm going to put it out there now. Juan could have gotten hurt, and the rest could have been history, right?
And on the other side of that, Jose Ramirez, it wasn't important for Jose to get more. Like, he's happy in Cleveland. He knows he would have got more if he had went to free agency, but he places a premium on being in that city with that team, with that organization, and he doesn't view that extra money to be meaningful to him. Now, a lot of times it's like, am I letting other players down in the future? Do I need to have that be a consideration? Some guys do, and some guys are just focused on what it means to them. So there are a lot of data points out there. It's not just one contract or one player. But, I think you can mention Jose Ramirez on one end of the spectrum and Juan on the other. What you hope for every player in the end is they've earned that right, and that's a very serious right to have earned, by the way, to be a free agent, and one that they absolutely should explore. But you hope they place a premium on what it means to be a part of a city and part of a community.
And I think that's kind of what we've seen a change over the years. It's because how hard it is to stay in the bigs, be a good player, get to free agency, and then find your worth. I mean, Santander was an example there just recently. I know he loves Baltimore, but when he earned the right to go to free agency, and then, hey, there's a team up north that's going, hey, we got this deal, we value you.
Right.
And he would be a fool to say, hey, love the organization, and it matches what he was looking for. And I think that's can't fault Baltimore. They have their opinions. Just like for you made a deal because that was the value, and Tony can't fault anybody because that's what he wanted, and I think that's what people this game's within a game, Mark. I mean, before I let you go, do you have a story through all the years? I know you do, of maybe when you were exposed to kind of, oh man, this is nuts. When I was at the winter meetings, Derek Falvey with the Twins talked about the evolution of the Pablo Lopez, of how long it took to get, the conversation started on how they targeted him and taking a risk and who that worked out, and maybe some other trades that didn't. But do you have a memory or story to kind of give context to all this?
I mean, I remember all the way back to early in my career when I was assistant GM with Manny Ramirez in Cleveland, trying to sign him. And, there was a documentary crew coming behind Jeff Morad, the agent, as he's walking into our suite at 3 a.m, going to the Red Sox suite, back to our suite. And the craziness of in the negotiation, he's trying to, place, the ability to kind of say which of our clubhouse guys were going to, either come with him to Boston or stay, had to be part of the deal. And because he had a guy that did flips to him, one of our clubbies that did flips to him every day, in the back area. And, that one's a memorable one because I was a young guy, just in disbelief that we were having these conversations with kind of the agent shuttling between rooms at 3 a.m. I remember doing a deal on Christmas Day with Scott Boras, for a pitcher and having some issues with medicals, and he was in Hawaii and I'm in Cleveland, and trying to kind of work that one out as he's trying to be with his family on Christmas, and the medical was a fail, and we're trying to figure out how we handle that deal. So I guess what I'd say is there isn't an easy, clear route. You never really know where you stand in a negotiation because you always there are other teams at play, there are other variables. Every now and then one's, clear cut, you have a chance to sign a guy, it moves. It's very transparent. It's a relationship with an agent. You just a straight shooter. You've dealt with plenty of times and you know exactly where you stand, but those are the exceptions. The bulk of the cases, you're going to go through a roller coaster ride. You have to be disciplined to know what your alternatives are, to know what their alternatives are, to kind of frame some values and again, seek to find a deal the player feels good about and you feel good about in the end.
Yeah, that is true. And you keep saying you go to bed early now, or hey, you're not as late at nights. I'm just hearing, Zach, all I'm hearing is 3 a.m., 1 a.m.
That's no longer Mark Shapiro. I'm turning 58 next week, brother. If I'm going to sustain my ability to stay in the game, I'm early to bed, I'm an early riser. So, I got to go to bed early, as early as I can.
I understand. Well, hey, I mean, the game doesn't really sleep. Moves happen, but I got to learn to be a better early riser. I haven't been known for that. Yeah. But I know you got a lot going on, and baseball games are late. You got to be there and do all your work. So I appreciate you taking the time, Mark. And hopefully, if you make your way back down here, get a chance to talk to you more in person.
I always find my way to Baltimore at least 2 or 3 times a year. So I have to come into that studio and do it face to face, and we can trade some Gilman and Baltimore stories as well.
Go Hounds, Zach.
I refuse to say that.
Go Hounds.
I'm a Loyola guy. I'm a Loyola.
Oh, Loyola. Hey, I can many conquests over Loyola on the gridiron and on the baseball diamond when I was there.
Too many wins to count. For the Gilman guys. Appreciate it, Mark.
Okay, great to be with you, man.